All right, cheers and salutations. Welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Kit. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit that ring bell notification. That way, all you lovely, beautiful people are made aware when we upload new content. You guessed it, upon our YouTube channel. And today, we got ourselves a fun video to check out. It is titled none other than Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, Episode 16, The Unexpected. So, in case you may not be noticing it, praise be to Space King! Space King. Got my Space King sweater. Do you have one? I have one. And I even got the little marks on there with the robots. What's the robot skull? I won. Me win bigly with Space King. And praise be to Space King. It's very nice. It's very comfortable. It's soft. It's warm. It's cool out here in Chicago, and it's nice to wear, you know. So it's very comfortable. It's a very comfortable, high quality 10 out of 10 sweater. So there you go. But now, my lovelies, my beautiful people, you hip cool cats, we here at Chicago Reacts will be checking out this video. It's a fan of too much time, and listen, we're gonna tell all of you right here, right now. Please support the original content creator. It's the right thing to do. It's one thing to do, and I expect all you beautiful people to do that. So let's get ready to enjoy this video. In a 3, a 2, and an uno and out. Hold! Come on, Imperials.
Master Ayla had never allowed herself to go this far. She swung to the left, saber drawing streaking lines of blue in the air. The luminous weapon took the lives of 3 men, melting straight through the whirring chainsword the first of them raised in defense. His face was a mask of frenzy and disbelief as he was neatly bisected despite the integrity of his parry. The bladed chain of the weapon went whipping out wildly, cutting the man's face and red cap in half, while Ayla smoothly spun to the left, evading the bits that came flying out at her. She
Jedi filth.
Twisted in the air, carried farther than was natural on winds pulled into reality by the power of the Force, and landed in a neat crouch nearby, sweeping her saber back to the right in the process, taking the heads of 2 more Imperial soldiers as she landed. The Jedi Master thrust her free hand out, pushing the headless bodies forward into a cluster of nearby soldiers who were preparing to volley fire into her. They only managed a few sloppy shots before the corpses landed nearby, the glowing blue coils of their guns flaring to life in a horrible display of screaming and death. Composed of blue fire and terrible force, the Imperial soldiers were eradicated by their own unstable weapons, though, oddly, the guns themselves seemed more or less intact afterwards. Ayla had rarely fought with this much lethal skill, and never against living opponents. Only in combat with droids did she do what she was doing now, allowing violence, passionless and pure, to flow through her. She took every opening, rode every lethal current which came to her, and struck at every foe with the intention to kill. What conscious thought she maintained was focused almost entirely on making sure she did not commit to anything too suicidal, holding herself back from accidentally performing any acts so lethal they would take her life as well as the lives of her enemies. This could be hard for her to do, as it had been in the past, and yet, frankly, it wasn't. Not there, not then. Everything was in sync within her, and Ayla felt honed like never before, subsumed by neither compassion nor hatred, as she remembered the teachings of her own master and embraced the recklessness which had enabled him to learn Vapad. Though she would not manage to match his own lethal skill on just this rush alone, she was certainly closer than she ever had been. The knowledge was not comforting. All around her was the massive main avenue, her advancing army grinding its way forward at her back, the Imperial menace attempting to impede them at her front. They were desperately trying to halt or slow her forces by any means, forming pockets and bulwarks and using all manner of varied weapons and tactics. Most of these defenses and attempts were pulverized.
So, I guess the Republic thinks I can get one above the Imperium. We still got some gas in our tank.
By her artillery support, and when they finally had the good sense to hide in the shadows of the spires, the imps were handed off to her elite vanguard, and, of course, the Jedi Master herself. At this rate, they would come within sight of the Imperial Temple in little over 12 minutes, perhaps sooner if nothing unexpected reared itself up before her advance. Ayla was not happy nor sad about her progress. She was simply satisfied. The Imperials had to be stopped, and they were being stopped. General, Sith Trio hold up dead ahead. They've already incinerated Auric's squad. Commander Husk and what's left of his men are either being evac'd or ID'd as we speak. I'm holding my squad back for now, scouting for a less lethal approach to the targets. Ayla's alien brain brought the name of the commander to her lips without so much as a conscious twitch, easily able to remember every last one of the clones under her command.
Okay, all right. So the Imperials are in a trap, and the clone troopers are at least holding their ground. So, well done. You know, there's more plot in this entire Star Wars scene than Disney has achieved in its time it acquired Star Wars from George Lucas. In case y'all don't know, apparently it cost the Acolyte it cost the studio, Disney, $230 million. And rumors has it that there's additional costs that haven't been factored in. If they actually spent $300 million, I'm actually going to bang my head against a brick wall.
Good thinking, Captain Graves. Keep out of their reach until I get there. I'll clear them out myself. She radioed back through the comm pin she had placed in her vest. Already, Ayla was orienting, reaching out with her senses and quickly locating the Imperial force wielders which Graves had indicated. They bent the force in ways
They're psychers, how dare you!
She had never conceived of, making the very fabric of it warp and moan in odd, destructive forms. She followed that foreboding wail, feet kicking with heightened speed and strength as she crossed the battlefield like a speeder. Are you sure you don't want us to cover your approach, General? We can be next to you in seconds if you ping us. Graves sent back. Ayla allowed herself a grim smirk. These will be the 5th, 6th, and 7th Imperial Sith I kill today, Captain. I think I figured them.
They are loyal servants of the Emperor, not Sithari.
Out. She said, Roger that, General. We'll be on standby to advance after you're done. Oh, and General, said Captain Graves. Yes, Captain. Don't be a stranger. You Jedi can't always pick up all the slack, and we commandos make house calls. Graves said, some humor forcing itself through his normally grim demeanor. Ayla smiled somewhat. She knew that his effort was the direct result of her own lack of humor, her own grimness. On Graves, it was almost endearing, especially when one got to know him. On Ayla, it was a sign that something was wrong, very wrong. She made it a point to seem a little less absorbed in her task, to avoid affecting the morale of her troops. Noted, Graves. Stay ready to cover me if I call, she said. The Jedi leapt the remains of a crashed Imperial gunship, landing atop its nearly skyward pointing tail, and from there, seeing the three Graves had spoken of. Bent and ravaged by their bizarre techniques, all but one of the three were blinded, and wore blood-streaked rags over their empty sockets. Chains rattled and clinked from where they hung, affixed cruelly to hand and ankle.
Witness your doom! Do you hear the voices too?
Yet hanging free. They were all bald and emaciated, so thin and hairless as to seem sexless, leaving Ayla utterly uncertain as to whether she faced a coven of robed crones or a trio of three wailing male sorcerers. Even their voices were distorted, rising and falling in pitch as they cast their power out in reckless waves of fiery destruction. The three held aloft staves which ended in torch-like heads, objects of focus for their flames. All around them, in wide cones and arches, were the sprawled, burned remains of hundreds of the vanguard forces. The sight of the scorched dead reminded her of her purpose, and the Jedi Master breathed out the emotions building within her, becoming as cool as the color of her skin as she honed herself for battle once more. The very act of preparation seemed to draw the attention of all three of the Imperial Force wielders, and they raised their staves into the air, screaming out wordless chants of hell and flame. In response, the torches on the ends of their focus staves flared bright. Ayla could feel the wave of their intentions reach her far before any actual heat or flames were birthed into reality. The Jedi's body tensed, coiling as she breathed the Force into her muscles and joints, strengthening and propelling them to enable her speed to defy all logic. It was by this speed that she evaded the balls of flame which exploded in her wake, not thrown, but spontaneously generated into existence in places she had been only moments before. She could feel them reaching out for her with their senses, fumbling to catch the cartwheeling form of the Jedi Master as she leapt and evaded another explosion, and then another, drawing nearer and nearer as she approached in an unpredictable zigzag. One reached out with a gnarled, filthy hand, clutching at the air as if to grasp something from on high.
Come on, psychers. Come on. Come on, psychers. Don't give up on me now. Keep on fighting.
While another bent low, pressing their forehead against the steel ground, appearing to enter a state of supplication or prayer. Ayla felt the ground begin to heat beneath her feet as the air started to hum, as if she had just entered into the mouth of a massive microwave. Spotting the wreckage of a nearby chimera and the impact crater of a massive shell which had left a deep hole in the avenue, Ayla acted without thought or planning. Her movements and choices a flow of precognitive judgments made more by the Force than by her own thinking mind. She rode those currents, but barely controlled them. Extending her hand, she ran on, heading towards the APC, seeing that its back-facing troop hatch was wide open and facing her. She sprinted hard towards it, no longer angling for the Imperials, feeling small blisters and burns already beginning to form across her body, the disfigured touch of their technique bleeding into reality. Ayla had only seconds more, leaping the crater instead of taking cover within it, her back now to the three as she sunk all her effort into this final plan. Exertion played plainly across the face of the Jedi Master as she pulled her extended hand back towards her chest, closing it into a fist as she did. The Chimera lurched and then flew forward, suddenly pulled free of its own wreckage as if yanked by thousands of elastic ropes. She leapt up, spinning around to face the sorcerers once more as the open maw of the Chimera came flying after her, the Jedi pulling in her arms and legs just as it snatched her out from the air. The arcing trajectory of the flying vehicle husk guided the wreck straight towards her three opponents.
Oh, no.
But she was hardly done, and neither were they. Maws of flame opened above and below the Chimera, dousing it in fire from both directions as it hurtled closer to the three. The two Imperial Force wielders who had been attacking focused, moving their upward and downward facing columns of flames at pace with the nearing form of the burning Chimera. But even they could sense that they would not manage to destroy it that way, despite being wholly focused on the flying vehicle. This was where the third stepped in, mumbling and babbling obscene words of fire, tongue literally alight. The chained Imperial cupped hands around their burning mouth, and as the Chimera seemed to be about to fly into and crush the three of them, the third, sighted Imperial screamed, issuing forth much more than sound with the effort. A wide jet of superheated warp matter blew out of their mouth in an intense cone of thermal obliteration.
Witness your doom.
Chimera was caught in its entirety, and where it had managed to retain most of its shape and structure under the bathing torrents of flame prior, its armor was revealed to be worthless against the new attack. Its body was warped, utterly shredded into glowing slag by the Melta-style blast of heat which the Imperial was screaming into existence. The Chimera's momentum was sapped by the blast almost instantly, and it landed heavily, leaving a glowing smear of ceramite and metal as it came to a grinding halt, now less than a quarter of its original size. It was so destroyed, in fact, that none of the three Imperials had been able to see or define the perfectly cut circular hole in the away-facing position of the Chimera, which had been made there by Master Ayla almost the instant she had entered the Chimera proper, having always intended it as a distraction and little else. The two sorcerers who had failed to kill her smiled and laid their hands appreciatively upon the back of the third, who was busy rubbing their burnt lips and spitting out molten fragments of their own teeth. The third smiled in spite of the pain, having no idea that Ayla had not perished within the craft, but had instead cut her way out of the flying APC just as it had passed over the deep crater she had considered using for cover.
Well, no more eating steak dinners for the psychers, eh? Or Groxburgers.
They discovered this a second or so later, when Ayla's saber burst from the ground beneath them, skewering and slicing away their feet as it spun. The three mutilated Force wielders were blown away as she used the Force to push the circle of steel above her directly up and out, jumping up a moment later herself. Around Ayla lay the writhing, cursing forms of the three, and she wasted no time, jumping into the first and decapitating the Imperial without mercy. She did the same to the second, and intended to do the same to the third, but once more, the sighted third found the strength to act, glaring through bloodshot eyes as power filled them completely, opening a mouth full of flattened, burnt teeth. The sorcerer repeated the same technique which had been used to destroy the Chimera, firing it directly into her. It was instant death, or rather, it would have been. But Ayla had figured them out, found their weakness, and had no shame in exploiting it fully. These Imperial Force wielders hated and feared the very force which they used, which flowed through them. She was hesitant to call them Sith, because even the Sith, hateful as they were, did not treat the Force as a serpent, a venomous beast which they sought to use whilst avoiding its fangs themselves. Yes, their techniques were powerful indeed, with a level of brute application Ayla had never seen and could not replicate. But she danced and moved with the Force, making it and herself as one, and
It's not the Force. It's the warp. And they're protected by their divine overlord, you Jedi filth.
did not fear it or hate it as they did. Her grasp of this power was pure, trained, and unclouded, and so, for her, it was only a matter of effort to do what she did next. Reaching down with the Force, Ayla found her opponent, specifically the grip they had on the fabric of the Force, and with a gentleness which bordered on kindness, seized the metaphorical wrist of the sorcerer attempting to exert their influence, and broke it. It was like breaking straw, and in place of burning gouts of superheated death, the sorcerer beneath her, who was glaring death into her, burped up a shallow draft of warm air and died less than a second later as Ayla neatly snipped off their head. Her rebuke had been trained to be used against the likes of Ventress and Savage, Sith acolytes who embraced the Force and the dark side of it wholly. Compared to that level of dedication, this act was easy, and several times she had sensed a strange elation from the Imperial she was killing, as if they were grateful to have died, without being fully connected to the Force. The revelation reminded her in no uncertain terms that the perversions and distortions of this empire were truly without end. Ayla was about to call her troopers forward when, without warning, she sensed something and froze. It was just a subtle, soft brush against her senses, a tickle, perhaps even an illusion. But even so, it had, for a brief moment, turned her blood to ice. It had been the dark side. Pure, unrestrained, and black as the stretch between voids. Had it been an illusion? She was not sure, but not being sure was not good enough to ignore it. She signaled the vanguard forward, and then jumped back into the hole she had made, crouching as she found herself once more within the smoking maintenance crawl spaces of the colossal roadway. She used the Force to filter the air and moved swiftly, feet light as she crouched and ran at once. The Jedi moved back towards the crater she had used to reach these tunnels, and halfway to the breach she found a hatch that led further down. With a flick of her wrist, she forced it open and jumped through, eschewing the orange ladder left there for her descent. Beneath were some more maintenance access points, and then another hatch which led down into the first set of sub-roads beneath the main avenue, which were massive in their own right. The fighting was also occurring down here, though with less vehicles from both sides. She ignored the battle, moving around the combatants as she made her way lower and lower, following the memory of the sense, the echo it left in her, an echo she was more and more certain had been real and not imagined. She had studied the maps of her approach extensively, and her memory was excellent, so it was not long before she began to figure out where this presence had lingered. Security Center Delta Y, one of the many security monitoring rooms which had been used by the civilian government's law enforcement and emergency services before the invasion. She had suspected most would be abandoned by now, though it made sense that the
She walked into a trap. What do you expect? That's what the Jedi like to do the most.
enemy would select one as a command and control position. If they managed to slice their way past the city's security networks and defenses, then they'd have access to countless cameras and sensor devices scattered all across the ongoing battle. The realization only fueled her drive further. Whatever was being done there, it needed to be stopped. She reached the center entrance and found the doors locked and unresponsive. It was no matter. Her lightsaber granted her the access she lacked, and soon she was inside the small, vaguely dome-like security room. Her eyes, accustomed to the twilight of her homeworld, pierced the dimness with ease, and she saw standing before her 3 figures. But these 3 were not as the others had been, not at all. One was a many-limbed droidman, robed in red, its attention focused solely on a nearby
1000100010 Tech Priest Engine Sia
console it seemed to be interfacing with. Not far was another robed form, though this one was hunched and contorted, clearly badly malformed beneath its tattered vestments of thick, brown sackcloth. And, standing before the 2 of them, facing away from her, was the tallest and most imposing of the trio. The robe which sheathed this figure was stark black and luxuriously thick. Golden pins, medals, and chains coated its shoulders and sleeves, and the straight-backed posture
It's the Inquisition.
of its wearer was completely at odds with the uncanny and crooked stances of the other 2. Ayla raised her saber. "Halt! This is your one chance. Surrender now, drop your weapons, or you will all die, she said. The Jedi Master was fully prepared for them to attack her, prepared to dodge back outside the room, prepared to cut her way back in from a different direction. What she was not prepared for was them, all of them, ignoring her utterly. She took another step forward. Now, she insisted. I think she is serious, Master, said the hunched figure, its voice a gravelly cackle. It crawled a little closer, revealing its mangled arms and hands as it used them, ape-like, to approach. The skin all across its arms was coated in tattoos and scarred symbols, the sight of which made Ayla sick for no discernible reason. Bones jutted like small horns or thorns from around its fingers and knuckles, and it bled from them, though no blood.
How very apropos. I'm watching this, at the final days in September. It's September 28th. Evening as a thunderstorm is hitting Chicago. Yeah, how very nice. Yeah, boy, I'm gonna sleep well tonight.
Actually dripped off onto the floor, clinging unnaturally to the skin. She moved her saber to face it, but found no need to halt it. That was done by the upraised hand of the central figure, the motion revealing the being's hand and little else. Pale, flawless skin bore the many intricate and ornate rings of the Imperial's long-fingered thin hand. Yet despite their luster and quality, it was the black talon-like nails that tipped each digit which drew eyes the most. Ayla shivered at the sight, but held fast as the robed Imperial began to turn around to face her, moving slowly, deliberately. So far as she could tell, none but the droid men were armed, and that red-robed abomination seemed fully occupied by whatever its task was. In spite of this, Ayla could not shake a deep sense of menace which was flooding into the room like a thickening miasma of toxic gas. "You will do nothing," said the turning man. "She and I will reckon. She and I alone." Ayla had had enough. She thrust her hand forward, issuing forth a column of the Force. The air thrummed with the energy of her attack, the concussive wave rolling out from her and colliding with the room and everything inside it. Walls shook. Consoles exploded and broke, and the few windows that looked out onto the road burst and blew out. Ayla did not drop her guard for even a moment, fully expecting retaliation, but being surprised twice more instead. No retaliation came, which was unexpected, yet what she found even more shocking was the state of her targets. The room looked nearly destroyed, save for everything near the three Imperials. Looking at the lines of dust on the floor, she could spot with her keen eyes the spherical border of protection which had blunted her own attack, and judged that the central figure among the three
you're out of your element.
Was the source. Another Force wielder. As the dust and detritus cleared out of the air, the Jedi Master was able to see that her push had not been entirely negated, succeeding in stirring and dropping the hood of her new opponent. The sight drew the breath out of her with an audible gasp. Was this man supposed to be human? His face was long, almost snouted, with a grin filled with filed, shark-like teeth, and
Is that guy a gene stealer and an inquisitor? Or he could be demonically possessed or something like that. All right, could be one of those.
rows of them at that. His eyes were pure black, like a doll's eyes, and his head was utterly hairless, revealing slightly pointed ears and a wide, too smooth scalp.
There was a gene stealer in the fleet! There was a gene stealer in the fleet!
And there was something more as well, a dark, pervading air of menace which was pouring out from the man like a gushing font. He finished turning, grinning his filed teeth at her. She wasted little time, not even waiting for the man to complete his deliberate turn, dashing forward, blue blade leading the way. The creature in the black robe suddenly picked up speed, becoming a blur as he broke and bent the rules of time and space, reaching into the confines of his void-shaded robes and drawing forth a glimmering black rapier. Sparks shone along the umbral steel of the obsidian blade like stars in night's tapestry, glowing bright as it repelled Ayla's attacks, forcing her back with a surprising amount of strength as the Imperial thing drove in with its own offensive. The shadows in the room danced, backlighting flares of blue and white light as the two blades clashed and slid. Ayla spun, piercing through the future with sight beyond sight, becoming a blur of motion and grace. The Imperial creature matched her grace with a lethal waltz of his own, black robes trailing as the thin, deadly edge and point of his power sword darted and swiped for her. Several times, the Jedi had been sure she had finally caught him in a mortal exchange, only to find herself slowed or even sped up, fouling her timing and enabling her opponent to fight on. She felt her teeth pressing against each other in growing frustration, warring to keep balance within herself. This man, this thing, was different.
That's not a human. If anything, okay, if there's a creature that looks demonically possessed, it's either this is an inquisitor that is involved or has practiced dark arts to tame such demonic creature, or it's a gene stealer acting like an inquisitor. One of the two.
From the other force wielders that the Imperials had been using. Perhaps some
It's the teeth and the smooth skin that's giving it away.
Master of their orders, whatever form that took in their twisted empire. However the case may be, the beastly man before her was no novice when it came to close combat, and his method of using the Force was disturbingly novel and indirect. Instead of increasing his direct strength and speed, he was corrupting time and space to achieve similar ends. The tactic left Ayla off balance and struggling to keep up, feet backtracking as the Imperial advanced, forcing her cleanly out of the cramped room, back through the short hallway that led to it, and into the wide, spacious area of the abandoned transit center. "Enough!" she yelled. The Jedi Master exhaled a powerful 360-degree wave of raw force, managing to shove the dueling Imperial back. She then reached towards him with her free hand and did as she had done before, touching upon the Imperial with the Force itself and seeking the multitude of cracks and flaws she knew would be there. No matter how brave, disciplined, ambitious, or faithful, one could not wield the Force with true mastery while fearing it like these Imperials did. Ayla found her target easily enough and once more took the Imperial by the metaphorical wrist and twisted. But those same flaws, those which had been present to each Imperial servant up to this point, were not present here. His grip held steady, firm, and once more he gave her that shark-toothed grin as he realized what she was attempting. Before she could recover from the surprise of her failure, he seized her as
Lady, you're out of your element. Run, 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 run like you never ran before.
She had him, though instead of attempting to break her grip on the Force, he did something altogether different. Like the sudden thrust of an unexpected lance, he pierced her mental defenses, if only briefly, and touched her mind to his own. Ayla moved to her own protection immediately. She was no stranger to mental trials or mind warfare. But she could not have prepared herself for what he assailed her with. Images, thoughts, sensations. Unlike every time before, this mental attack was not intended to rend her thoughts, steal her.
You know, I know that those are an antenna and everything, but that kind of looks like legs, you know, and that kind of looks like a head going down. Anyways, get your minds out the gutter.
Memories or alter her perspectives or beliefs. Instead, the Imperial created a brand composed of memories, sensations, and experiences and pressed it hot and bare to the metaphorical flesh of her mind. He was only able to keep purchase on her for seconds, almost less, but even that much time had been enough. Ayla's wide eyes reflected the trauma of her mind's vision. She had seen billions, untold billions, marching in forlorn trails, each step dragging screaming minds closer to their deaths. She had watched the sky fill with teeth, the entire expanse of space becoming stuffed, bursting with ravenous mouths and pincers, and worse. She had seen the horns and eyes of monsters which parodied existence itself.
All right, so it's either a demonic vision of the warp or a mind of the hive mind. Again, look, I'm only saying this because the guy, sharp fangs, smooth skin, very weird looking, ornate, could be a gene stealer cult leader trying to make himself look like an Imperial Inquisitor. It ain't the first time the gene stealers were that clever, or it could be just an Imperial Inquisitor that just decided to not wrap it up when he was messing around with the Slaneshi demon. Could be one of those two.
Had felt the tongues of fire that issued from their lying words. Death and war and promise and pain. A galaxy ruled by the dead, the violent, the scheming, and the mindlessly obsessed. She watched worlds burn and burn and burn without end. A death 1,000 years long, dragged slowly out. She tasted the ashes, ashes born from ashes. And in the last instance, she could even hear it. The laughter. The horrible laughter.
You hear the voices too?
When she finally found herself orienting back on reality, the Jedi realized that she had fallen to her knees, and that her saber had dropped from her hand and rolled to the feet of the grinning, monstrous thing that faced her. Her fingers were trembling, clutching at her tunic vest, feeling the rapid beat of her heart thumping hard and uncontrolled in her chest. She took a deep breath, but found herself unable to calm the racing of her heart. She attempted to rise, but found she lacked the strength to do so. Ayla looked up with unbelieving eyes at the monster who now stood over her, blade raised, foot trapping her weapon beneath it. What are you? She breathed. The Imperial smiled even more widely, his grotesque teeth appearing to grow larger as his thin lips withdrew even more. He extended his own free hand.
Brush your teeth and floss them every day, people.
Hand towards her, and Ayla shuddered, gasping as a harsh pressure suddenly pushed in on her from all directions, holding her perfectly in place and rendering her utterly immobile. Once he seemed satisfied with his psychic bindings, the creature lowered his black rapier, and the unnatural blur which had surrounded him during the fight fell away. She could observe him more clearly now, seeing that the bright golden smudges on his robes had not been the results of merely blurred metals and pins, but also the distortion of a large golden threaded symbol which predominated the front of his robes. An enormous, stylized eye. The Imperial took a shallow bow, splaying his arms in an open, mocking gesture.
I am the eye that watches from the long shadows,
said the man-creature, black eyes glinting.
There's some members of the Inquisition that I just... You didn't hear me say that.
I am the hand which commits the sins saints dare not consider. I am the mouth which questions silently for those answers which must not be known. I am the judgment of the righteous and the warden of the grey. I am an agent of the Emperor's most holy and devout Inquisition, and I see that despite our legend and reputation, I am, yet again, unappreciated by my allies, and by my enemies, utterly unexpected,
he said. Ayla tried to draw in breath but could barely manage it. "What do you want?" she
Your death, Jedi. I mean, I don't know.
asked. His unpleasant smile became even more demonically composed, the intention in his eyes reading as vile in every sense.
I was admittedly not expecting your intrusion, Jedi. I thought us rather well hidden here. That being said, your arrival is not unwelcomed. I have longed for a Jedi specimen of my own ever since arriving in this putrefied galactic disk. And now, well, now I have one,
He said, reaching into his robe and drawing out a thin silver scalpel. Ayla shivered at the sight of the cold instrument. The metal almost seemed to shriek in her mind, as if the echoes of 1,000 agonized voices were left staining its otherwise bright edge. She
Yeah, talk about a friendly guy. The ladies love him all the time, every time with a smile that wide.
pulled against the restraining force around her, but found no give in it, heart racing even faster as the man took a step towards her and began to bend. Her hand tightened, squeezing again and again in futile resistance. "What do you want?" she reiterated. He grinned his monster's grin.
a new pawn, someone who can be my eyes, my ears, my will inside your republic. Thank you for volunteering. And don't worry, while this will involve a lot of cutting, I will be sure to steer clear of your pretty face.
He kneeled down to be at level with her, long, serpent-like tongue sliding out to lick across his lips, somehow avoiding the edges of his many teeth.
Soon I'll split open that naive, soft mind of yours. I'll tenderly, carefully scoop out the things I don't want. And then, when you are in pieces, I'll stitch you back together with me inside.
Yay, Imperium. I chose a side, gotta wave my flag high.
She felt involuntary shudders fill her, and a desperate, wild fear begin to gnaw at the binding of her discipline. Her knuckles were white, eyes wide, almost bulging as the Inquisitor stroked the flat of his scalpel across her cheek. "Stop!" she started.
Shh. The work here is mine to do. All you need to worry about is the screaming.
He cooed as he raised the scalpel, now angling it to do more than stroke. His smiling face twitched, and a degenerate eagerness spilled off the creature in waves. Ayla knew he was not trying the least bit to hide. Her heart ached in her chest, beating so hard, so fast. When was the last time she had felt fear like this?
Scream. Loud and long, Xenos. Scream to make my work go all the quicker. Tau Eldari Rackle, you will be mine.
His words were cut short by an unexpected explosion, the ceiling above them breaking open as breaching charges
Oh no! Those damn commandos.
detonated. Debris and dust spilled in, followed closely by Aquila Squad, led by Captain Graves at the front. Heavily armed and already firing, the clones descended in a rain of blue bolts, one of which caught the Inquisitor in the chest, staggering the man back, though the bolt seemed to barely scorch his robe. A medal on his shoulder flaring to life and sheathing his entire body in a brief field of eye-achingly bright luminescence.
Upstarts!
The Imperial barked, punching out with his scalpel-bearing fist. One of the many rings there flashing to life, bursting apart as it issued forth a draconic column of what seemed to be pure magma. The gouge of heated material completely devoured the forms of two commandos instantly, but their attack had still managed to break his concentration, something which became clear when Ayla's lightsaber flew up from where it had been on the floor, and into the Jedi Master's waiting hands. She leapt forward in a lunging thrust which saw her connect with his lower torso. Once more, the Inquisitor was tossed away, the metal on his shoulder flaring bright and then bursting as it expended its technology, defending him from the lightsaber.
Damn Xenos!
He roared, blurring once more and narrowly avoiding two more counterstrikes, dodging blue bolts all the while. Just then, a set of wide double doors burst.
So, all right, he's probably possessed or been too exposed to the warp, so he's not a gene stealer, so I take it back.
Burst open, and more squads of troopers, composed of some of the vanguard, spilled in and began to open fire on the Imperial from their side of the room. The Inquisitor leapt and parried, and Ayla was slow to pursue, leaving him with time to aim his fist again, destroying another ring as it fired a thick, black beam of some kind of energy. The beam warped and crushed the wall into a small marble of dense material, but this time the commandos were ready, diving and rolling out of sight and avoiding the stream of malefic death. Meanwhile, the Inquisitor was batting aside the blue bolts fired from the vanguard, face a rictus of fury as he did. Ayla steadied herself, about to dash back in to confront the monstrous Imperial when she sensed something. The shark-toothed man was drawing in power, feasting on the Force like a starved beast let loose in a pantry. She knew what came next, and reached out, attempting to intercede.
Be gone from my sight!
The Inquisitor ordered, black eyes flaring white as power rolled out of him, crashing and trampling over itself as it rushed in.
Okay, this is actually a pretty badass rescue scene, and huge shout out to the fan was too much time. You are killing it. Just my goodness gracious, Cretaceous. Oh, what was he doing?
Visibly towards
before the Jedi showed up.
The troopers. Ayla managed to throw her presence between them just in time, her mental influence reaching and rushing around the billowing wave of psychic death their enemy had issued forth.
The clone commando don't have time to bleed.
And yet, once more, Ayla found herself facing a different kind of beast than the ones she had been dealing with before. This man clearly did not fear the Force as the other Imperials did, and his techniques were not half as blunt nor comprehensible as those she had already encountered. Ayla's head snapped back, blood spurting from her nose from the psychic backlash, only barely managing to stay upright with the help of Captain Graves, who had reached her position along with the rest of his squad. "General, are you all right?" the clone asked, supporting her as she blinked her eyes back into focus. The Vanguard, Ayla muttered, holding her head in her hands. Graves looked that way and scowled beneath the visor of his helmet. Half the Vanguard had died instantly when Ayla's defenses had failed, heads bursting like struck water balloons in their helmets. The rest had little time to thank their good graces as the Inquisitor crossed the distance between himself and the remaining clone troopers, his image a fuzzing, disorienting blur of motion. Men began to scream and die as he waded in amongst them, driving his rapier into eyes and throats and then into backs as troopers attempted to scatter. In what seemed mere moments, he had killed the entire Vanguard force, robes smoking, blood boiling on the black blade's wickedly straight length. He turned to face Ayla and her elite clones, face dark and indistinct. The commandos had already lined up their shots and barely needed their captain's command to do what they knew they needed to do. "Open fire!" Graves ordered. Aquila's squad did so, though in place of the traditional rain of blue bolts, they opted instead to fire their underslung grenade launcher attachments, a personal favorite of this particular unit. The
Kaboom.
explosives sailed on plumes of trailing smoke, exploding on contact with the ground wherever they fell. But the Imperial Inquisitor was far from done, growling and baring bloody teeth as he swept his free hand out in front of him. Fully half the grenades which had flown for him seemed to bounce against the air, ricocheting back the way they'd come. Graves grit his teeth, drawing his blaster pistol and neatly sniping the two explosives out of the air before they could make it back. Already, the Imperial was advancing at an unnatural speed, skidding across the distance like a Jedi possessed. "Back up, now!" Graves radioed into his wrist comm. He then snapped his arm out, firing with the rest of his squad in a desperate attempt to halt the monstrous advance of the enemy. But try as they might, they simply could not pin him. He was too fast, and when he wasn't, he made their sluggish bolts even slower. The meters between them and him were vanishing by the second. Ayla, who had been leaning against his other shoulder, stepped forward and raised her blade, sweat dripping down her chin, teeth clenched as she struggled to control her nerves. They were nearly pitched from their feet then as another explosion rocked the building for a second time, this one even larger than the blasts of the breaching charges. The entire windowed wall of their left came away, and in swept the Aquila herself, the name of both the squad and the gunship christening the side of the paint.
I do like how their gunships do look, and you know, here's the thing. Palpatine was a big dumb idiot. I mean, he had the galaxy. All he had to do was rule. But see, the Sith are so greedy and jealous and spiteful and filled with rage and hate. Like, he literally won. He took over the entire. All what he had to do. You know, again, I'm gonna take this quote from Red Letter Media. All what Palpatine had to do, instead of saying, "Oh, this war's gonna end," you know, if we kill Grievous, then this war will end, or you know, great. Dooku was dead, but you know what Palpatine could have done instead of like, "Hey, look, you know, ours," and he could have manipulated it. Look, our intel services say that it wasn't Dooku who was running the thing. An unknown person is not only guiding Grievous, but the Separatist Senate as well. We don't know how long this war will go on. I mean, Palpatine could have kept on amassing more power, and he could have kept on amassing, you know, more support. And it's quite clear that there were a lot of Jedi dying. He didn't have to do the Great Jedi Purge. I mean, he could have kept the war going on for quite some time, more battles that was costing the lives of the Jedi, and you know, then he could have probably eventually could have ordered, could have done like Order 66. He could have. There was so much he could have done. Plus, even when he took over, he began cheaping out the Imperial military. Like, and that's something I never really understood about Star Wars lore, or especially like I guess was the Disney. You know, there's the original one, and then there's the Disney Star Wars lore, and that is the Empire cheaped out on so much of its forces, from Imperial Star Destroyers, like giving up on the carriers, which I think were far more superior than the destroyers. You know, the TIE fighters were just weak, like paper planes, you know. And then even the stormtroopers too, like their armor, like everything about them, weak. I guess that's, you know, Palpatine wanted to rule in fear, but see, the thing is, somebody could be afraid for so long until they push back.
Painted craft. The leering orange and red face of the Starbird the gunship was named after faced the Inquisitor. The blaster cannons mounted just beneath the stylized beak also clearly honed in on his position, as were the two wing gunners and the various missile pods mounted above them. There was a pause, a moment where the Imperial monster faced down the hovering form of the Republic war machine, both instruments of death weighing the other. The Inquisitor raised the heel of his right foot, and the gunship opened fire. The Inquisitor reached out with his left hand, the green blaster bolts diverting to the left and right as if striking a reflective barrier in the air, before the whole ship quaked, trembled, and began to creak in the psychic grasp of the Imperial. The wing gunners attempted to open fire, but found their own beams similarly diverted or unable to reach. But the rain of more mundane blaster fire from the commandos, the continuing hail of blaster cannon bolts from the turrets on the gunship, and then Ayla's own force push met his defense at once and overcame it. He cursed, spinning away, robes scorched and smoking from every surface as he took off at a run, leaping up onto the wall of the transit center, and zigzagging his way higher and higher until he was within reach of a second-story balcony. The gunship, now free of the man's psychic vice, fired all its missile pods at once. The Inquisitor barely managed to leap over the salvo as the munitions whistled in, his blurred body arching in the air, landing on the balcony like a dark meteor trailing black smoke and rolling backwards onto his hands and knees, just managing to avoid the blind, scything volleys of blaster fire which chased after him. "Keep it up! Smoke him out!" Graves ordered, sheathing his own pistol and pulling up his blaster rifle, preparing the grenade launcher. A hand grasped the barrel of his gun and forced it down. Scowling, Graves turned in shock to find the culprit was none other than his own general. "No! Belay that order! We are retreating now!" Ayla said to the others.
That's right.
"But General, we must
Run, Jedi filth, run.
pursue!" Graves insisted. "If we pursue, we die. Let's go, commandos! That's an order!" She snapped. "General!" Graves said in acknowledgement, waving his men back. The commandos maintained a lethal screen of fire as they pulled back to the open side hatches of the gunship, mounting up quickly, reading no life signs in any of the others who had come with them. Once they were all on board, Ayla grasped onto the back of Graves' armored shoulder and squeezed hard enough for him to feel it. In response, he raised his wrist comm again and spoke. "Pilot, gun it!" he ordered. "Sir!" the clone affirmed, spinning the gunship around, allowing the tail gunner to take over the covering fire before lurching forward in a rush of repulsor lift boosters. They were out of sight in seconds, even as the Inquisitor stalked up to the shattered wall, watching the lingering trails of smoke left in the wake of their retreat dissipating. He pondered as he did, and then listened as his malicious servant dragged himself to his side.
I suppose you have a good reason for not intervening.
The Inquisitor growled.
Yes.
Cackled the creature who cowered in his shadow.
Your orders. You claimed the reckoning was yours.
It crooned.
Between me and her, yes. But the replicae were clearly not part of that arrangement.
The Inquisitor retorted. The malformed thing shrugged its uneven shoulders.
You could have killed them all if you had truly desired it.
It said.
Yes, at the cost of revealing myself to every psyker on the planet. You will be punished for this,
said the Imperial. His monster hissed and clawed the ground, rending furrows in the steel floor.
You are merely venting on me, Master.
Whined the thing.
You are upset that she got away,
it dared accuse. The Inquisitor merely laughed at the notion.
The Jedi can run as far and as fast as she can. There is nowhere on this world she can run to that will enable her to escape what is coming. She has only prolonged the inevitable.
I knew he was going to say it. All right. So, that was nail biting, and there's wind blowing outside my house. It's stormy, it's cold, it's miserable out there, and I'm here nice inside drinking a glass of lemon water. But I gotta tell you, what a shame that heroic, glorious Imperial Inquisitor could not stop that evil, vile Jedi. That's right. Back to choosing my side again because, hey, the Imperium has never done anything wrong. And shame on that Jedi for killing glorious Imperial Inquisitors and psychers and guardsmen who are just trying to fight for the Emperor. Something tells me the story's going to get worse. And there will be some very scary things that will make us all cry and run away in absolute terror. But all right, shout out to a fan with too much time. Great video, 10 out of 10. Keep at it. And I've been told like some of these videos now get to 3 hours long, which I'll probably have to break them down into different parts. But nonetheless, folks, we are back. Star Wars versus Warhammer 40K. Whose side are you on? The correct side is the Emperor. The correct side is the Emperor. The correct side is the Emperor.